Yeah. Yes, it's a little funny, isn't it? And a little sad watching the pundits squirm. Watching the pundits squirm. Uh, Especially when it comes to, those neocons like your Bill Crystals out there. It's a little funny, it's a little sad watching pundits squirm, grasping at what remains of the fading paradigm that their entire careers have been built around. What do they do when the tides turn? Can their analysis ever be trusted again? It must be scary. I sympathize with them. I do. If you've been existing in this media paradigm, whatever's been established as the macro simulation, the narrative, as it were, the sort of overarching meta-narrative that carries from news station to news station through all the syndicates, carries through the airwaves, carries onto the internet, carries in the words of tweets and social media, just everywhere. What happens when the culture war turns the tide? What happens when the paradigm begins to shift? Say, for example, away from political correctness and all those things and into, more back into the politically incorrect. Just one example of a paradigm shift that may occur. That, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And they say there's no such thing as the slippery slope. This is a complicated question. Of course, when we talk about things like inertia never stopping, it just keeps on going and going. That's not how physics works. That's not how reality works, of course. There is always a counterforce at the other side that pushes you back. Well, if culture went into a specific direction a little bit too much and more people felt disenfranchised and alienated by what was going on, if faith overtook reason and modern religion took the place for both the devoutly secular and non-secular, but those that don't have a religion, if they found a modern religion, even though the truth, reality, and ideology, I should say ideology and reality, run on parallel, sometimes interweaving tracks. We have all these things happening, these movements happening, but eventually there must be a counterforce that says, well, maybe that's enough. Maybe it's time to move the other way. Maybe it's time to stop here, be neutral right here. We've had enough of cancel culture, outrage culture. We've had enough, perhaps, of the modern religion that is social justice. Maybe there's been enough censorship, perhaps. Some people might say that. And maybe not. Maybe this isn't the truth. This, of course, is all subjective. But maybe we've had enough of hearing about the modern religion of global warming. Hey, maybe we've heard enough about those silly libs. Maybe we should stop, trying to divide people up by making fun of the left and the right. Maybe it's better if things go in a different direction. I don't know. I'm not making an opinion or a judgment call. I'm just throwing a lot of things out there. But, of course, in the news industry, yes, they've been spending years and years and years creating this, as I call it, a macro simulation, a sort of world where, who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. But it's really this understanding, this societal understanding what the narrative is all about, what has been established, what the establishment has created as reality, as truth. Using ideology, using, of course, business acumen. A lot of the power is centralized in people that have very close ties to the financial industries, of course. And really, so there's easy funding. You have, largely these groups that hold, very rich individuals and conglomerates own much of the mainstream media, and more of the mollusk or middle media, your Young Turks and so on and so forth, are getting more and more money from people like the Koch brothers. Actually, Koch brother, rest in peace, David Koch, the plutocrat, the oligarch. But, he is human, so we should, of course, show our respects to David Koch and every conservative's favorite boogeyman, every Q follower's favorite boogeyman, George Soros, of course, also funds a lot of these things. But, there's great incentive to keep the narrative going because you have what is defined. There isn't an unknown here. It's what people have come to understand as reality. And some of it's true, and some of it's fantasy, some of it's magic, some of it's linguistic propaganda, some of it, some people might call them conspiracy theories if they didn't want to think too critically. I consider it more, most people to be conspiracy analysts because you're not really theorizing so much as you're analyzing an existing theory that was established. The genesis was by somebody else. So they're grasping at what remains of their fading paradigm, and their entire careers have been built around it. What do they do when the tides turn? Can their analysis ever be trusted again? So can they change their story without any sort of negative consequence or repercussions? I don't see how they can do that without losing their credibility, without losing their truthiness, as the late Stephen Colbert once said. It must be scary. I do sympathize with them. Like, your paradigm is slowly ending. The Reagan-era paradigm of the neoliberals, the neocons, it's slowly coming to an end. I'm not sure if it's going in a more a conservative direction with the Gen Z, the Zoomers, or if it's going in a more progressive, as they say. And I do have a new video out, word thinking, reactionary, and progressive. So check that out on BitChute and YouTube, of course. But, are we going in a more progressive direction with Bernie Sanders and, to some degree, Elizabeth Warren, of course, Andrew Yang, and to some degree, Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson? Are we going in that Jill Stein Green Party direction? I mean, the way that you see that Tulsi Gabbard and Jill Stein and all these individuals have been treated. Andrew Yang with the blackout, the media blackout, where he doesn't matter where they are in polls, the DNC will say, well, you're not in the right poll. You're not in the poll that we would like you to be in. So, of course, and with their media partners, in the modern religion that is institutions, you have state, media, and academia. You have your state and media partners, your collusion, as the WikiLeaks emails back in 2016 showed. Of course, the Democrat Party did collude with the mainstream media to keep that narrative going and to keep it consistent, because it's harder to spot lies when everything just keeps on remaining consistent. Of course, they would send their articles to John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, during the 2016 election, and they'd ask for approval, and maybe you want to do a little editing. Of course, there were people ghostwriting articles. I mean, this happens on both sides, but we have it recorded in WikiLeaks. So, can their analysis ever be trusted again? I don't think so, especially after the president and many others have popularized the term fake news, in which people are spinning, as they always have. They've always spun the news. There's always been a bit of spin in a direction. Maybe the establishment wants it. Maybe the pharma companies, whoever is funding. Check the commercials of your favorite mainstream media outlet, your TV station, Fox News. How many of those are pharma companies and medicine companies? How much are funded by the military-industrial complex? And how many kickbacks do those pundits get? Of course, follow the money. With any modern religion, notably institutions, you need to follow the money, because state media, they really put those two words together, state media. They have incentive, they have all kinds of funding, and the gears of power keep on turning. So they can't change their story. Don't expect the mainstream media to become more credible or to become less pro-war. They will try to create conflicts, because conflicts create ratings. They create ratings. And if you have any other ideas as to what conflicts can create, do leave me a comment below, please. Thank you. And moving on.